There are lots of opportunities that we have to talk about higher education. Dan mentioned, the current legislative session. I have personally been burning up Route 63 between Columbia and Jeff City. I think I'm up to 12, 13, or 14 times, and I made the round trip. I haven't stayed there as I've gone about that task, but it's a real challenge in terms of how higher education is positioned in our state. It's a real challenge because of the demands on our legislatures to try to deal with a myriad of very complicated issues, and so we have to be in there weighing in with what our message is and weighing in with the things that are important to our state. As I've been coming at this from 35 years in my background, kind of doing something else, obviously my learning curve is pretty vertical. But it doesn't take too long when you're out talking and listening to what the concerns are and what the opportunities are to find out a number of things that are going on in our institution. We are an incredible economic engine for the state. We are producing about $570 million a year we're getting from external sources, research grants, opportunities that we have to get funding into our state from sources that can really help us take care of our responsibility. We are producing about $1.1 billion in real economic terms to the state. So that's obviously with 27,000 faculty and staff, with all of the projects that we have that generate tax revenues. So we are a real economic engine, and obviously right here in the Ozarks, the extension opportunity that we have for the citizens of this region really makes a difference in everyone going about their daily activities in this part of the state. So our 4 campuses are very distinctive, and I expect them over time to be sure that their strategies are unique to what they're about and what they're about from their background, but also to be sure that they pay attention to what's important for the future. What I would suggest to you as I've traveled around and have had a chance to again start to develop my own voice about this role and own voice about higher education, there's 4 or 5 things that have kind of jumped off the page, and if you'll allow me, I'll hit those very quickly. The first is that this university ought to be an economic growth engine for the state. One of the things that Keith's involved in is, in fact, turning those ideas that get generated on our campuses by our faculty, by our researchers. How do we turn those ideas into intellectual property? How do we incubate those in an opportunity that can then be turned into a business? And Mike and I last night had a chance to drive around to look at the Jordan Valley project here, which again is an example of how economic development can occur. So we have great partners in the state that we are, I think, scratching the surface on, whether that's Danforth in St. Louis or Stowers in Kansas City. Lots of opportunities to create jobs that are going to be about the 21st century in terms of where growth will come from, and so we ought to be all over that, which I think we are from that perspective, but a lot of work to do and a lot of opportunity there. Second issue, as I already hit on, is we have 4 distinct campuses. I want those campuses to continue to be autonomous in terms of their mission and their objectives, but at the same time we have to look for where are the things that can be done by sharing across the campuses and sharing, frankly, around the state as we look at constrained resources 4, 5, 6, 10 years out in the future. The third point, which is part and parcel of what we're about, is about the students. As I've traveled around, there's probably no greater concern than I have than the students in our state as they migrate their way from grade school to high school, and their ability to have access to college, their ability to desire to go to college, and their ability to be retained and supported while they're in college. That's what we're about. We're about teaching, we're about research, we're about ensuring that we're socially very active in our communities, and we're about economic development. So the teaching part of this equation is incredibly important. The fourth point I would make is the economic model, the funding model for university systems have to continue to be thought about, as status quo won't allow us to be successful in the future. In 2002, about 58% of the University of Missouri's operating budget came from the state. Anybody want to hazard a guess what that number will be this year? About 32%. 58 to 32 in a period of about 6 or 7 years. So what does that mean? Well, it means that all the great work that Missouri State and University of Missouri are doing in increasing the endowment, the fundraising part of that, has to be redoubled and redoubled. It means that our ability to attract research dollars and new sources of revenue has to be dealt with very aggressively. It means that the way we build buildings, there's no recurring capital program now in the state. We have to be sure that we're finding creative ways of either community-university partnerships or public-private partnerships that can help us ensure that we have an infrastructure that's going to be 21st century, not 20th century, trying to be rolled along to support our future. And you go to some of our buildings that are state-of-the-art, can you imagine what an attraction that is for students that are considering staying in Missouri or going elsewhere? So you know how that works, and we have to keep up with that. So as I come in with 35 years doing something else, I hope one of the things that I can bring in is a perspective about how do we get creative in some of those opportunities, and economic development is going to be one that we're really going to push the pedal to the floor on, because I think that is an opportunity that we have that is unique. Finding sources of revenue, finding sources of support, again, will be something that we'll have to be creative on, and creative doesn't mean reckless, and that shouldn't be interpreted that way, and creative doesn't mean giving up controls of things that are important to the university. Our brand of our university, what we stand for culturally as a university, we don't have to give those things up in order to find a partner that can come in and help us do what we need to do. Fifth and final point is that this whole notion of, is education important to our state? Is education important to our youth? I had a chance to be with the governor on Tuesday, and we talked about all the initiatives that are going on, try to get at this issue of, do kids in grade school and students in high school, do they want to go to college, and how do we get at that? And there are literally in this state and every state around this country hundreds of initiatives going on, and I think as we step back, we got to assess, are they making enough difference or not? And if not, then what do we have to do to keep pounding away at that? We are going to take on for the university a short research project to try to get at that message, and that message is going to be different for someone that understands global economies and how do we compete around the world. It's going to be different for someone that understands the benefit of economic development. It's going to be different for someone that understands if you go to college, your opportunity to earn is going to be about $800,000 difference than if you did not go to college and get a college degree. So how we get those messages conveyed around a state as diverse as this one is, it's going to be a challenge, but we have to do that. Our message obviously then has to convey into legislatures that get the message about the importance of education. So that won't happen overnight. It'll be work in progress, but certainly work of the chambers, the business community, which you all represent. The state chamber is so important to that equation to be sure that we're kind of connected in these messages, because they do all tie together.